Under the pale mist that hung above the violet sea, Eli worked inside his small salvage ship. The radar blinked weakly on the console, showing strange signals that came and went like whispers. He lived alone on this planet, far from trade routes or colonies, collecting metal and data from old crash sites. He liked the silence. It was peaceful and predictable. But that night something different reached his receiver. It was a soft, repeating tone, old and broken, yet full of life. A distress call. The kind that said someone out there was still alive and waiting. Eli adjusted the signal range and found the source about 3 miles south, near the cliffs of Pale Rock. His first thought was that it was another lost drone or a weather pod, but the sound carried a strange rhythm, almost like a heartbeat. He put on his pressure jacket, grabbed his oxygen pack, and took the crawler out through the mist. The air shimmered with static, and his boots sank into the wet dust as he walked closer to the cliffs. There, hidden under layers of fog and sand, he found the wreck. A small pod shaped like a silver tear half buried in mud. The metal was not human. It breathed faintly, glowing from within like something alive. Eli moved closer and touched its surface. It was warm, almost soft. Then he heard it, a voice weak and trembling from inside. It spoke in broken words mixed with a soft melody that didn't belong to any human tongue. He forced the hatch open, coughing as mist and smoke spilled out. Inside, under tangled wires and shattered panels, lay a figure. She was curled up, her skin pale with a soft golden hue, and long strands of silver hair clung to her face. Her ears were small and pointed, twitching faintly as she breathed. A thin tail rested against her leg, glowing faintly like a thread of light. She looked human, but not completely. Her eyes fluttered open, and when she saw him, she whispered a few words that barely reached his ears. "Wash me, human." The words were strange yet gentle, full of pain and trust. Eli didn't know what she meant, but he lifted her carefully and carried her to his crawler. She was light, almost weightless, and her skin felt cold, coated with a strange layer of dust that cracked where he touched it. When he placed her on the medical bed inside his ship, she tried to speak again, her voice shaking. He couldn't understand everything, but one word came clear every time. Wash. He thought maybe the dust on her skin was toxic or something from her crash. He ran the purifier and filled a small basin with clean water. When he dipped the cloth into it, steam rose faintly. The air smelled of iron and rain. He sat beside her and began wiping the dust from her arms. It was thick, almost like dried clay, and beneath it, her skin seemed to shine faintly like fine glass under light. She flinched when the cloth touched her, then relaxed slowly, her breathing evening out. Eli worked quietly, careful not to hurt her. As the gray film came away, he noticed strange markings across her shoulders, soft, glowing lines like faint circuits under her skin. She whispered again, words that sounded thankful. Her tail twitched slightly, brushing the edge of the blanket. He looked at her face. Despite the alien features, there was something deeply human in her expression. Fear, relief, exhaustion. When she opened her eyes again, she stared at him for a long time as if trying to remember who or what he was. Then she said a single word softly, one that sounded like her name. "Lyra," he repeated it awkwardly. "Lyra." She nodded slowly. For the first time, her lips curved into a small smile. Hours passed while he cleaned the rest of the strange coating from her. Every time he dipped the cloth into the water, the basin shimmered faintly, glowing with the dust he had removed. When he finished, he covered her with a blanket and checked her pulse. It was strong but slow, her heartbeat echoing faintly in a rhythm that felt almost musical. Eli leaned back and looked at her sleeping form. Outside the window, the mist rolled like soft waves, and the stars glowed dimly beyond the clouds. He felt something stir inside him, a quiet sense that the silence of his world had changed forever. The distress signal had stopped, but the air still carried its echo. A reminder that something or someone had found him out here in the endless quiet. Before turning off the lights, he glanced one last time at her face. The faint glow of her markings pulsed slowly like the heartbeat of a star. He didn't know who she was or why she had crashed. After a while, Lyra stirred. Her fingers twitched, and her ears flicked once before she opened her eyes. She blinked at the light, confused for a moment, then turned toward Eli. Her voice came weak but clearer than before. "You help me?" she asked softly. Eli nodded. Yes, you crashed. I found you and brought you here. She looked down at her arms, now clean and free from the hard coating. Her skin caught the light, faintly shining where the strange patterns crossed her shoulders. The air, she said slowly, trying to find words. It burns, I need… The clean water. He poured her a small cup and handed it to her. She studied it as if the cup itself was something new. Then she took a sip and smiled faintly. This… good, she whispered. Eli sat nearby, watching her closely. Your ship is damaged, he said carefully. You can't stay in the open. The storms are strong here. Lyra nodded slowly. My ship, not ship. It was Scout. Too far from home, no one. Hear me now. Her eyes lowered. Signal gone. Her English was broken, but her meaning was clear. She was alone, just like him. He gave her a small piece of dried fruit from his rations. She sniffed it curiously before eating, her tail flicking with each bite. It was the first real sign of life in her body since the rescue. After finishing, she looked up at him and asked, Why you help me? Eli hesitated. He thought about the question. He could have said duty, curiosity, or habit, but none of that felt true. Because you needed help, he said simply. She tilted her head. Many humans do not help strangers. I'm not many humans, he said, and she seemed to think deeply about that answer. Time passed slowly in the small ship. Eli repaired what little damage the crawler had taken from the storm, while Lyra moved around carefully, studying every object she saw. She touched the walls, the tools, even the light switch, and each time her expression carried a mix of wonder and memory. She hummed softly sometimes, low and rhythmic, and Eli realized it was a language in itself. Her humming seemed to change the air, smooth, calm, and warm. Later that day, she helped him clean the control room. When he handed her a wet cloth, she smiled and said, Now I wash. Her voice carried a playful tone, as if she understood the memory of her first words. He smiled faintly but said nothing. As they worked, she began to ask about Earth. She wanted to know what oceans looked like, what snow felt like, and if humans really lived in cities of glass and light. Eli tried to explain in the simplest way he could. When he spoke about the stars, she grew quiet, then said, We see same stars, maybe same dreams too. That night, when the mist turned silver under the moonlight, Lyra sat near the small window staring outside. Eli noticed her expression, half wonder, half sadness. Do you miss your world? He asked. She nodded slowly. My home was green, forests that sang in wind. But no one there now. We move always, searching new sky. Her words carried loneliness that mirrored his own. For years he had chosen isolation, far from the noise of colonies and people. He had told himself he liked the quiet, but now, sitting beside someone who also carried silence in her heart, he realized how heavy it truly was. Lyra turned toward him, her amber eyes glowing faintly. Your world far? Very far, he replied. But sometimes it feels close. I still remember the sound of rain. She smiled softly. Then maybe this world will rain soon. It wants to. He didn't understand what she meant until later. As the night deepened, soft drops began to fall against the hull. For the first time since he landed here, the mist turned into gentle rain. Lyra pressed her palm to the window, eyes wide with joy. See? She whispered. It remembers your rain. Eli stood beside her, listening to the quiet patter of water against the metal. The world outside felt less empty now. The sound was soft but full of life, like the beating of a heart he had almost forgotten. As Lyra drifted to sleep again, Eli watched the small smile that lingered on her face. Her breathing matched the rhythm of the rain, slow and peaceful. He realized something had changed inside the ship, and inside him. He no longer felt like the last human on a forgotten planet. There was warmth now, a quiet light that came not from machines but from the presence of someone who had fallen from the stars and still managed to smile. Days passed softly on the quiet planet. The mist began to lift, revealing more of the silver ground and the faraway mountains that shimmered under twin suns. Eli repaired the broken circuits in his ship while Lyra learned to move around more easily. Her strength was returning and the glow in her eyes had grown brighter. Every morning she would stand by the window watching the strange light rise over the sea. She often asked simple questions about human things like why he wore gloves, why he drank black water that smelled bitter, and why he smiled without reason sometimes. Eli tried to explain, but often she just nodded as if she understood without needing the words. Lyra had begun to pick up his language faster than he expected. She repeated his words softly under her breath, testing the shape of them. When he said tool, she said it too, stretching the sound. When he said light, she touched the lamp and whispered it again as if the word itself held warmth. Sometimes she laughed when she got the sound wrong, and the small cabin filled with something that had been missing for too long. Life. One evening, Eli was outside fixing the communication antenna. The air was cold and the mist clung to his clothes. He heard footsteps behind him, light and uncertain. When he turned, Lyra was standing at the hatch, wrapped in a blanket. Her hair shimmered faintly under the dim light. "You should be resting," he said, tightening a bolt. She tilted her head slightly. "You fix the voice?" "I'm trying," he said, glancing up at the antenna. "If it works, someone might hear us." She stepped closer. "Someone like your people?" "Maybe," he said quietly. "Or maybe yours." She looked at the sky where the two suns had begun to fade. "My people do not come back. We send scouts, not rescue." Her voice grew soft, and he saw her hands tremble slightly. "But maybe your voice will find them instead." Eli didn't know what to say, so he just nodded and kept working. She watched him for a while, then asked, "Why you live alone, human?" He paused. The question hit deeper than he expected. "Because it's easier," he said finally. "Machines don't disappoint. Silence doesn't hurt." Lyra looked confused but didn't press him. Instead, she picked up a fallen wire and handed it to him carefully. "Then maybe silence can change," she said softly. That night, they sat together near the small heater. The outside world hummed faintly under the wind. Lyra hummed a melody he didn't recognize, slow and peaceful like water moving over glass. Eli closed his eyes and listened. "What is that?" he asked. "It is from my world," she said. "We sing to stars before we sleep, so they know we are still there." He smiled faintly. "Maybe the stars are listening now." Her tail twitched once, a sign he had learned meant she was pleased. "Then they will hear you too." The next day, Lyra began helping more around the ship. She sorted tools, wiped dust from the panels, and asked endless questions about every light and button. Sometimes she got things wrong, pressing switches she shouldn't, and Eli had to stop her before she triggered the wrong system. But her curiosity made the days brighter. When they ate together, she always shared her portion, even though he told her she didn't have to. She seemed to believe sharing was more important than comfort. "Food tastes more when two eat," she said once, smiling at him with quiet certainty. He didn't argue. As the days blended into weeks, the sky above began to change. Strange lights flickered beyond the clouds, and the static in the air grew stronger. Lyra felt it before Eli did. One afternoon, she touched the wall and frowned. "Something moves above," she said. Eli checked the sensors, but they showed nothing. "Probably weather interference," he said, but she shook her head. "No, I feel it. The air hums different." That night she couldn't sleep. She stood at the window, tail still, eyes sharp and distant. Eli joined her quietly. "You're afraid," he said gently. She didn't deny it. "Not afraid," she whispered. "Just remembering. Before my crash I felt this same hum. It means watchers in the sky." He looked at her, uneasy. "Your people?" "No," she said firmly. "Not mine." The thought unsettled him. He had lived on this planet for years without seeing a single active ship, and now something unseen might be watching them both. He turned off the main lights to hide the ship's glow. Lyra understood without words and helped seal the shutters. When the night finally passed, the hum faded, but the worry didn't. Eli checked the horizon again and again, scanning for anything unusual. Lyra sat beside him, silent, her gaze lost in the shifting mist. "If danger comes," she said at last, "I will help you." "I promised." He looked at her, remembering her first words, the plea for him to wash her, the quiet trust in her voice even when she was broken and afraid. "You don't owe me anything," he said softly. She turned to him and shook her head. "No, I owe you everything. You gave me life again." The way she said it made the air feel heavier. Eli didn't reply. Instead, he turned back to his work, though his thoughts stayed with her. Somewhere deep inside, he knew her promise would mean more than either of them could guess. That evening, as the twin suns sank below the horizon, the mist glowed gold and silver around them. Lyra reached out a hand toward the light as if trying to catch it. "Your sky is beautiful," she said. "It's not my sky," Eli replied. "But maybe it can be ours." Eli worked long hours repairing the antenna and trying to strengthen the communication link. The static on the screen reminded him of a voice trying to speak, but trapped behind walls of silence. Lyra watched him closely, sometimes handing him tools without being asked, her sense of timing uncanny. "You listen to machine like heart," she said one afternoon. "You feel what it needs." He smiled faintly at that. "And you listen to stars like friends," he answered. She looked at him surprised, then nodded slowly. "Yes, but they are quiet now. That is what frightens me." He glanced out the window. The mist outside seemed thicker than before, and faint lights moved far away, too steady to be lightning. "You think someone's up there?" he asked. Lyra's tail twitched once. "Not someone, something. They look for me. Or what was mine." Eli turned toward her. "Who are they?" Her voice lowered. "Collectors. They follow Rex. They take what's left. They don't ask." He understood what she meant. Salvage groups existed across human space too, but the way she said it carried another kind of fear. "Then we'll hide," he said. "The canyon nearby will block our signal." Together they worked to move the ship before nightfall. The mist grew heavier, glowing faintly in the starlight. Lyra guided him through the thick fog with small gestures, her senses sharper than his scanners. When they reached the narrow canyon, the walls rose high around them, black stone reflecting the dull light of their engines. Once the ship settled on the rocky ground, Eli powered down all systems except the life support. The world outside turned completely still. Inside, the soft hum of machines faded, replaced by the quiet beat of two hearts in the dark. Lyra stood near the window, her reflection shining faintly on the glass. "This place feels asleep," she whispered. "That's what we need," Eli said, sitting beside the control board. "Sleep keeps us safe, but sleep didn't come easily." Lyra lay on the bunk, watching shadows shift across the ceiling. Eli stayed awake, staring at the faint light on the radar. At some point, he must have drifted off because when he opened his eyes again, the cabin was glowing faintly blue. Lyra was sitting up, her palm pressed against the wall, her eyes closed. The glow came from her skin, tracing the patterns along her arms. "What are you doing?" he asked softly. She didn't open her eyes. "Listening. The collectors are near, but the planet speaks louder. It hides us." He moved closer, not wanting to break whatever she was doing. The glow spread across the wall like slow-moving veins of light, then faded back into darkness. Lyra lowered her hand, breathing heavily. "It worked," she said. "They passed above. They cannot see." Eli exhaled slowly, realizing how tense he had been. "That was incredible," he said quietly. "How did you do that?" She gave a faint smile. "My people talk to living systems. This planet is not dead. It remembers how to protect." For a long while, neither spoke. The only sound was the wind outside whispering through the cracks of the canyon. Lyra leaned back against the wall, tired but calm. "You helped me fix my body," she said softly. "Now I help you fix your home." Eli looked at her curiously. "My home?" She pointed at the walls around them. "This ship. This silence. You live like man lost in dream. But maybe dream can wake." He didn't know how to answer. For years he had thought silence was safety. Now, sitting beside this strange being who glowed like starlight and spoke with such simple truth, he began to wonder if silence was just another kind of cage. The next day, the weather changed again. The mist thinned, and the first sunlight in weeks broke through the canyon. Lyra stepped outside for the first time since the crash. She looked around, her eyes wide at the sight of the glowing rocks and silver sand. She knelt and ran her hands through the dust. "It remembers light," she whispered. Eli joined her, adjusting the small oxygen filter on her suit. "It's strange," he said. "Everything here feels old but alive." She smiled. "Planets live longer than us. They only sleep between stories." Her words stayed with him long after they returned inside. While he checked the ship's systems, he found himself thinking not about escape or rescue, but about what it meant to stay. Each day spent with Lyra made the vast silence of space seem smaller, and the idea of home feel closer. That evening, Lyra brought one of her broken devices from her pod. It was a small sphere with faint blue lines across its surface. "This is a translator," she explained. "Old one. Maybe it can help us speak better." Together they repaired it, her fingers guiding his. When they activated it, a soft pulse filled the air, and Lyra's next words came smoother, more fluent. Now I can say thank you properly, she said with a small smile. Eli chuckled. You already did more than once. Then I will say it again, she replied. Thank you, Eli. You gave me my name again when you said it. You gave me my voice when you listened. He looked at her, feeling a quiet warmth he hadn't felt in years. The translator hummed softly between them, their words finally clear, but somehow it felt like they had been understanding each other long before it ever worked. They are back, she said quietly. Eli looked at her. You're sure? She nodded. Not close yet, but near. The air changes when they come. It becomes heavy, like storm before thunder. He didn't hear anything, but he trusted her senses. She was rarely wrong. He turned off every external light and dimmed the cabin. The ship became a shadow among the rocks. Lyra rose and joined him by the control board, her eyes glowing faintly in the dark. What do they want with you? He asked. They follow energy, she said softly. My ship's power is not dead. It calls them. They collect life sources, not people. They do not care if they destroy what they find. Eli frowned. Then we'll have to stop them from finding you again. Lyra studied him, her expression calm but sad. They are stronger than us, Eli. Their ships are old as time. Maybe, he said, but they don't know this planet like we do now. She smiled faintly. You talk like warrior. He shook his head. No, just someone tired of running. They began working through the night, linking the damaged transmitter from Lyra's pod with his ship's energy shield. Lyra guided him through the process, her hands moving gracefully over the circuits. The lights on the panels flickered, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. She explained that her technology was alive in a way human machines weren't. It could think, but only when it trusted its user. It listens to emotion, she said softly. If you fear, it hides. If you care, it wakes. Eli had never heard of a machine like that, so it understands feelings? She nodded. It was made to protect, not to fight. Like me. By dawn, they had created a weak but working energy field that could hide their signal. It wasn't strong enough to last long, but it would keep them hidden for a few more hours. Lyra leaned against the wall, exhausted. Her glow dimmed to a soft shimmer. Eli poured her water and handed it over. She smiled gratefully, her voice barely above a whisper. You work too much for someone you just met. He looked at her for a moment before replying. You're not just someone. Her gaze met his, silent but full of unspoken meaning. The moment stretched between them until a faint alarm broke the stillness. The scanner blinked red. They're in orbit, Eli said, his tone low and steady. Lyra closed her eyes, breathing slowly. They search with light. If they find my wreck, they will come here next, Eli thought quickly. Then we'll move before they do. Outside, the twin suns had not yet risen. The world was dark and covered in silver mist. They powered up the crawler and drove through narrow paths, using the canyon's walls to block their heat signature. The sound of engines echoed softly, and Lyra kept her eyes on the sky, her body tense. When they reached the cliffs where her pod had crashed, they saw the glow of scanning beams sweeping across the ground. One beam passed dangerously close to their crawler. Eli turned off the power and both of them held still. The beam paused for a moment above them, then moved away. Lyra exhaled slowly. They are searching for my core. If they find it, they will not stop. Eli glanced at her. Then we destroy it before they do. She stared at him, startled. That core is piece of me. It holds memory of my world. He hesitated, then said gently, If it stays, they'll find us. If we remove it, they lose the trail. Lyra looked at the ruined pod, her eyes shining with emotion. After a long silence, she nodded. Then I will trust you. They climbed down to the wreck where the twisted metal glowed faintly beneath the mist. Lyra placed her hands on the hull, whispering something in her language. The ship responded, opening a small chamber where a bright orb floated. The core pulsed with golden light, reflecting in her eyes. She lifted it carefully, her fingers trembling. Goodbye, she whispered to it, then handed it to Eli. He took it and placed it into a containment shell. Together they carried it far from the canyon, to a ridge overlooking the sea. There Eli set the shell to overload. The light grew brighter until it burst silently, scattering into the sky like dust. For a long time neither of them spoke. The only sound was the gentle wind returning after days of silence. Lyra finally turned to him, tears glimmering faintly on her cheeks. Now no one will find us, she said, but I have no home left to find either. Eli looked at her with quiet sympathy. Maybe home isn't a place anymore. Maybe it's just the people who stay. She stared at him for a moment, then smiled faintly. Then I am home, she said softly. They returned to the ship just as dawn broke over the sea. The mist turned golden and the light wrapped around them like warmth. The collector's ships drifted away in the sky, their search fading with distance. For the first time since her crash, Lyra stood at the doorway without fear. Eli joined her, watching the rising suns. The light reflected in her eyes, and for a moment it felt like the world itself was breathing again. Lyra reached out and touched his hand. You said machines don't disappoint, she whispered. But you are not machine, Eli. You are heart. He smiled at her words, not knowing what to say. They stood together as the wind carried away the last dust of the explosion, glowing like stars across the brightening sky. The danger had passed, but both of them knew something deeper had begun, something that would outlast the silence and the storms of that lonely world. The morning after the explosion, the world seemed different. The air was clearer, the mist softer, and a pale blue glow hung above the sea like a slow-moving dream. Eli stepped outside the ship and felt the wind brush against his face. It carried the scent of salt and rain, a smell that reminded him of home long forgotten. He looked toward the horizon where the suns were rising together, spreading gold and silver light across the cliffs. For the first time since Lyra's crash, the sky looked alive again. Inside the ship, Lyra was awake and watching the rain fall through the small window. Her tail swayed slowly as drops of water ran down the glass. The world is washing, she said softly. It is healing after the burn. Eli nodded, understanding more than he could say. The explosion that destroyed her ship's core had also released strange particles into the air, and now the whole planet seemed to shimmer, as if it were breathing new life. He poured her a cup of clean water and handed it over. She smiled, her eyes reflecting the light from outside. Every time you give me water, she said, I feel alive again. They shared a quiet breakfast of dried fruit and bread, a small meal that somehow felt like a celebration. Lyra talked about her world, the forests that sang when the wind moved through their crystal leaves and the rivers that carried light instead of water. Eli listened with quiet fascination, imagining a place where even silence sounded beautiful. When the rain grew heavier, Lyra stood at the open hatch, letting the drops fall on her skin. Her golden markings glowed faintly with every touch of water. This feels like home, she whispered. Not my old home, but something new. Eli watched her from behind, the way her hair stuck to her neck, the way her tail shimmered like fire under the rain. She looked fragile, but there was a strange strength in her posture. You should come inside, he said softly. She turned, smiling. I am not afraid of water anymore, he smiled back. You were never afraid of it. She tilted her head, thinking about his words. No, she said after a pause, I was afraid of being seen. But you saw me first, and I did not vanish. Her words struck something deep in him. He had lived for years without anyone truly seeing him either. They were two lost souls who had somehow found each other in the quiet between stars. As the rain slowed, they began to work together again. Lyra helped him recalibrate the transmitter to send a new signal, one that carried both human and alien frequencies. This will call anyone listening, Eli said. Maybe someone will answer. Lyra's hands moved carefully over the panel. Maybe, she said softly. But if no one comes, I will not be sad. I already found what I was meant to find. He looked at her, but she didn't meet his eyes. She focused on the controls, her expression calm yet distant. The new transmitter came online, humming gently. Its soft pulse spread through the ship, mixing with the rhythm of the rain still dripping from the hull. That evening, as they rested by the heater, Lyra began to hum again, the same melody she had sung when they first hid in the canyon. This time Eli joined her, not with words but by tapping the rhythm on the table. She smiled, surprised. You learn fast, she said. Only from the best teacher, he replied. Her laughter filled the cabin light and warm. For a moment the sound made the ship feel like home. As the night deepened, they stepped outside to watch the stars. The rain had stopped and the air smelled clean and sharp. The sky above was clear for the first time in months, filled with countless bright points. Lyra stood beside him, her tail brushing his leg lightly. Your stars are beautiful, she said. They're yours too now, he answered. She looked at him, her golden eyes reflecting starlight. Then we share the same sky, she whispered. They stood in silence for a long while, watching the stars move slowly across the sky. Then, without warning, a streak of light flashed overhead. It wasn't a shooting star, it was a ship entering orbit. Eli's heart tightened. "Do you see that?" he said. Lyra nodded slowly. "Yes, it is close." He hurried back inside and checked the scanner. The signal was faint but familiar. It was a human patrol ship, one of the older models still used for deep space rescue. Relief and worry mixed inside him. "It's one of ours," he said. Lyra's expression softened. "Then they will come for you." He looked at her, realizing what she meant. "For us," he corrected gently, but she shook her head. "No, I cannot go where you go. My kind would call me lost." "Your kind would call me something else." He stepped closer. "I don't care what they call you." She smiled sadly. "You should. Humans need names for everything. They don't understand what doesn't fit." Before he could answer, the communicator beeped. A human voice came through the static, clear but distant. "Unidentified salvage vessel, this is Patrol Ship Horizon. We received your signal. Prepare for contact." Eli froze. Lyra looked at him. Her face calm, but her eyes filled with quiet sorrow. "They come for you," she said again. He didn't know what to say. He only knew that the thought of losing her filled him with a strange ache he couldn't explain. Outside, the rain began to fall again, soft and slow, washing the world clean once more. Lyra reached out and touched his chest gently. "Do not be sad," she whispered. "The rain means life begins again. You gave me life. Now I will give it back to you." He covered her hand with his own, his voice low. "Then promise me one thing. Don't disappear into the sky without saying goodbye." She smiled faintly. "I promise." The stars above shimmered, and the sound of engines began to echo faintly from far beyond the clouds. The rescue ship was coming closer, and the quiet between them grew heavy with everything they wanted to say but couldn't. The world outside gleamed under the rain, as if waiting for the next chapter of their story to unfold. The next morning, the rain stopped and a soft silver fog drifted above the cliffs. The human rescue ship was close now. Eli could hear its distant hum echoing through the canyon, steady and powerful. He stood by the control board, staring at the blinking signal light. Soon the ship would land, and his long years of silence would end. But instead of feeling relief, his heart felt heavy. Lyra sat near the window, watching the sky. Her golden eyes reflected the light that shimmered above the horizon. She looked peaceful, but Eli could tell her calm was only a mask. She had been quiet since the night before, her thoughts far away. "They will land soon," he said softly. "Yes," she replied without turning. "You will go home." Eli hesitated. "And you?" Lyra smiled faintly, her tail curling around her feet. "I will not go where I am not meant to be." He stepped closer. "You don't have to stay here, Lyra. They can help you. They can take you somewhere safe." She finally turned toward him. "Safe," she repeated slowly. "You think there is a place in your world for someone like me?" "They will study me. They will call me strange. I do not belong there, Eli." He didn't answer at first. She was right, and they both knew it. But the thought of leaving her alone on this planet tore at him. "Then I'll stay," he said quietly. She looked at him, startled. "You cannot. Your people need you. You have a sky to return to." He shook his head. "I already found what I needed here." For a long time, neither spoke. The soft hum of the approaching ship filled the silence. Finally, Lyra stood and walked toward him. "You gave me your time," she said softly. "You gave me your kindness. But your journey does not end here. It begins again." Her words broke the air like a gentle wind. He tried to speak but couldn't. She touched his cheek lightly, her fingers warm. "You washed the dust from my body when I was lost," she said. "But you also washed the silence from your own heart. That was the true healing." Eli took her hand in his. "I don't want this to be goodbye." She smiled sadly. "It is not. The stars will remember us both. When you look at them, you will see me." Outside, a bright light appeared through the mist. The rescue ship was descending. Its engines made the ground tremble softly. Lyra stepped back toward the open hatch and looked at the rising glow. "They are here," she whispered. Eli turned off the last of the ship's systems. The small vessel that had been his home for so long would soon be left behind. He looked around the cabin, every corner filled with quiet memories. Her laughter, her humming, the sound of rain against the metal. The human ship's voice came through the speaker. "This is Horizon. We've located your beacon. Identify yourself." Eli pressed the comm button. "This is Eli Ward, salvage engineer, Outpost 27. I'm alive." His voice was steady, though his hands shook. Copy that, Eli Ward, the voice replied. We're preparing to dock and retrieve you. Do you have any others with you? He glanced at Lyra. For a long second, he said nothing. Then he pressed the button again. No, he said quietly. Just me. Lyra gave him a small smile, her eyes shining with gratitude and sadness. Thank you, she whispered. The rescue ship touched down on the plain nearby. Its searchlights cut through the mist. Lyra stepped outside, the wind tugging at her hair. She looked up at the huge vessel hovering above. Its silver hull reflected the twin suns breaking through the clouds. She turned back to Eli one last time. When I said wash me, I did not mean only the dirt on my skin, she said. I meant the loneliness that clung to me like shadow. You washed it away. Eli's throat tightened. Then you did the same for me. She nodded once, her golden eyes soft. Then we are clean now. As the engines roared above them, Lyra stepped backward toward the rising mist. Her body began to glow faintly, her markings brightening until she looked like light itself. Goodbye, Eli, she whispered. Remember, every rain is a beginning. And then she was gone. The mist folded around her, swallowing her glow until the world fell still again. Eli stood there for a long time, staring into the fog where she had vanished. The rescue team arrived minutes later, calling his name, asking questions, but their voices sounded far away. He answered mechanically, following their lead as they escorted him onto the horizon. When the ship lifted off, he looked out the window at the planet below. The sea glimmered in soft blue light, and for a moment he saw something, just a faint shape in the mist, like a tail of light moving across the cliffs. He smiled. Later in his report, Eli wrote only one sentence. I found a survivor. She didn't stay, but she changed everything. That night, as he sat by the viewing deck, he watched the stars outside. The darkness stretched endless and silent, yet it no longer felt empty. Somewhere out there, he knew Lyra was alive. Maybe among her people, maybe walking under another sky. The thought gave him peace. Rain began to patter against the hull as the ship crossed through a water-rich nebula. He closed his eyes and let the sound fill his ears. It was the same rhythm he had heard that day on the planet, the sound of renewal, of hope, of two lost souls who had met among the stars. He whispered her name once under his breath. Lyra. The sound drifted away into the hum of the engines, carried out into the endless night. And though she was gone, he knew she would hear it somewhere beyond the stars, where the rain never ended and every drop told the story of how a human washed an alien soul clean and found his own heart shining again.